And we're live, Warden Danielson.
Good morning, everyone. I hope everybody had a good Thanksgiving weekend. Before we take the roll call, I would just like to take a minute to welcome Councillor Kennedy back. We've really missed your valuable input and your humor, and we're sure glad to see you sitting here with us. So,
thank you very much.
If you take a roll call, please, Mr. Rutter.
Warden Danielson.
Present.
Councillor Moffat.
Present.
Councillor Roberts.
Present.
Councillor Kennedy.
Present.
Councillor Burton.
Present.
Councillor Ryle.
Present.
Councillor DeVolen.
Present.
And Councillor Shell.
Present.
Thank you.
Could I have a mover and a seconder to adopt the agenda for this morning? Councillor DeVolen and Councillor Shell. Thank you.
Moved by Councillor DeVolen, seconded by Councillor Shell. Be it resolved that the October 13th, 2021 Haliburton County Committee of the Whole agenda be approved.
All in favor? That's carried. Is there any notice of pecuniary interest or general nature thereof today? Hearing none, we have no delegations. If I could have a mover and a seconder to adopt the minutes of September the 8th, Committee of the Whole. Councillor Burton and Councillor Roberts.
Moved by Councillor Burton, seconded by Councillor Roberts. Be it resolved that the minutes from the September 8th, 2021 meeting of Haliburton County Council Committee of the Whole be adopted as circulated.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Under item number 6, correspondence, we have a letter from the Haliburton Kawartha Pine Ridge District Health Unit. And I believe that they are looking for some support. Is there any comment or question about this? You have a resolution, Mr. Rutter?
I do. The drafted letter of resolution of support is: be it resolved that the Haliburton County Committee of the Whole receives for information the September 16th, 2021 correspondence from the Haliburton Kawartha Pine Ridge District Health Unit to Minister Elliott, calling on the provincial government to commit dedicated funding to support both catch-up and recovery of public health activities, as well as the ongoing increased demands for health unit response to COVID-19. And further, that the Haliburton County Committee of the Whole supports the request from the Haliburton Kawartha Pine Ridge District Health Unit. And finally, that the Haliburton County Committee of the Whole recommends to Haliburton County Council that staff be directed to forward a letter indicating council's support for the health unit's request.
Thank you. Did you have a comment, Councillor Roberts?
Yes, I'll move it and also have a comment. I wasn't able to be at that meeting where where this conversation took place, but I'm actually really pleased that this letter is coming forward, because this has been an ongoing theme throughout COVID, as we know of all agencies and organizations. Public health units got hit the hardest. Every single person, dietitians were deployed to be working at vaccination centers, and so many programs that they do on an ongoing basis to prevent and promote good health and to prevent disease, pardon me for not speaking clearly, have been gone by the wayside. And I would wholeheartedly support this, and I'm sure that hopefully there'll be a seconder.
Okay, we have a mover for the resolution. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Moffat, thank you. So having heard the resolution, all in favor? That's carried. Next on the agenda is roads, and I believe we bring in our Director of Public Works to give us an update. Good morning, Robert.
Good morning, Warden. Good morning, Council. Hope everyone had a happy Thanksgiving. We have our October status report. With regards to capital projects, we finally got the Eagle Lake Bridge rehabilitation finished, and the structure's open to 2 lanes of traffic. As well, Fishtail Creek is open to 2 lanes of traffic. We're also finishing up our double surface treatments. We've got an update to the report. We finished County Road 10 yesterday, and we're finishing up County Road today or tomorrow, and then we'll move on to single surface treatments. Regarding maintenance, just finishing up minor items from the summer and the fall and getting ready for the winter. And hope that we get this weather that will remain like this for a little bit longer and not get such a bad winter that they're calling for. Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions on the status report for October? Councillor DeVolen?
Yeah, I had the good fortune last week to speak to you, Robert, and go have a look at the rail bed all the way from Kinmount to Haliburton. And the project is coming along nicely. There's some confusion in the public that it's happening in multiple steps, but by the end of next year, the portions that are going on, that it'll be substantially improved with a compactable surface on the top and whatever. And it's just wonderful to see that work going forward.
Through the warden, thank you, Councillor. We will be bringing a report to council just to update on the contracts that are ongoing and what will be left to be done. We're trying to use all the dollars from the grant money as efficiently as possible to get as much done as possible.
Any other questions on the status report? Could I have a mover and a seconder to adopt it, please? Councillor DeVolen and Councillor Shell.
Moved by Councillor DeVolen, seconded by Councillor Shell. Be it resolved that the October 2021 status reports on capital projects, operations, and road maintenance be received for information by Haliburton County Committee of the Whole.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you, Robert.
Thank you.
Next up is EMS, and I believe we'd be hearing from the chief about a proposal for a master plan for paramedic services. Good morning, Chief Wade.
Morning, Warden, members of council. This morning I bring to you this report just because not only over the last 18, 19 months of COVID, but we certainly have seen significant growth in our call volume, especially in the last 18 to 19 months, but also in programs being the development of our community paramedic program and now the expansion of it. So what we're seeing is what I'm seeing, and a lot of this is due to the growth in our local population, the demographics of our population is affecting our call volumes. So what we're looking to do is, I think, to best accommodate the future needs of Haliburton County is to develop a fairly comprehensive master plan, which would look at everything to do with our services, being our call volumes, staffing, existing bases, locations and potential new bases, and additional suggestions to accommodate the increasing number of out-of-town transfers and some thoughts around that, especially for out-of-town transfers that are just down for routine CAT scan, and also to look at possible supervision, future supervision and management and administrative staff. So the thought is it would approximately cost $100,000 for a plan like this. And it's recommended that we put an application to be submitted to the Municipal Modernization Fund to support this project.
Any thoughts or questions about this? Councillor Roberts, then Moffat, then Kennedy.
Thank you, Warden. I think this is a great idea. We've all seen a shift and a change happening here in our community. And without that sort of overarching master plan, we don't really know where we're going. We're guessing. Is this the right time to have a new base, either north or up staff Tory Hill? Like we've been reacting, but I think this is the time to do something like this. And I just wonder, is there anybody can think of a better way to capture the population changes that we think are happening here? Because if we only rely on Statistics Canada and their permanent full-time population, is really not accurate of what's happening here, because a lot of people have been at their cottages 8 months, but their driver's license still says whatever, GTA. So how are we best able to capture what we think is the actual population in Haliburton County at certain times?
Do not disturb activated.
That's a good question, and I'm not quite sure what the answer is, given that we're always relying on late information or old information, and we all know that our population is increasing dramatically. Any thoughts on that, Mr. Rudder? And then
one of the things that I think is a really good indicator, and obviously the consultant that we retain would be speaking with them, is our health services. They actually continue to see growth on a regular basis for hospitalizations and other things of patients who are orphaned isn't the right word, but they are without a physician here. And so they require a hospitalist. And I actually had a conversation a couple of weeks ago with one of the physicians and Carolyn Plummer from HHS about that. And it does show that even though our population numbers aren't increasing, we're seeing a lot more people that are here, so that when they become ill, they are hospitalized here, but don't have a physician locally to help with that care. So they've asked for an opportunity to connect with the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan conversation, and so they're going to do that. But that will be a big part of the consultants' work here, is connecting with HHS and seeing how the continuum of healthcare can address those or the demands that they're seeing, and then how they can be addressed.
Thanks, Mike. Councillor Moffat, you had your question.
Thank you. Basically everything Andrea said. So thank you for that. I'm particularly pleased to see the opportunities for additional bases. I've kind of been harping on that off and on over a number of years, and the time is now right. So it's a good thing. What I would like to toss into the pot is that when this RFP goes out to secure the person or persons who are going to do this, that we have some conversation around interaction or discussion with the health hub out of Dorset, because I think it's important in terms of particularly around locations that we, especially with the changing demographics, really understand the travel patterns and needs of the north end of Algonquin Highlands, because we know anecdotally that people from the north end of Algonquin Highlands tend to orient toward Huntsville. So that could shift any potential location. So I think that some conversation as part of that process, part of that planning process, with the health hub that covers Dorset and a lot of north and in sort of inland to a lot of our lake folks in there, might just help set the table a little better for accuracy in terms of locations. Thank you.
Good point. Thank you. Councillor Kennedy and then Councillor Rao.
Thank you. I certainly applaud this effort, and I think it's the right direction at the right time. My only question is, there was talk in Eastern Ontario about amalgamation of services, and I see that Peterborough is now administering City of Kawartha Lakes. Have you heard anything lately on that initiative, where it stands at this time, Tim?
Yeah, if I may, everything from the latest we've heard from Minister Elliott, modernization is on hold, but it hasn't gone away. And so I don't think we'll see anything happening until after the next election now. But I'm not 100% sure, but it has been put on hold for now.
Thank you. And this is needed. I mean, everything from new bases in the north to outgrowing current bases and locations. So well done, and certainly support it.
Councillor Rao.
Yeah, I think that the whole idea of having new bases is going to happen because of the diversity of our particular county. But I think too, like, you get into areas where the closest hospital may not necessarily be a Haliburton County hospital. And in many cases, the location of the unit could be in a place that's closer to the edge of one of our borders, not because of anything other than the peripheral population, whether it's inside of Haliburton County or whether it's not. justifies it being there. So it might look at something where we're looking with other municipalities to determine where the most logical and best usable location could be. I guess that goes a little bit along with what Councillor Moffat and Councillor Kennedy were talking about EMS and the cost of EMS becoming much larger than a single entity for a given municipality. It's a major problem for us up here, and you know, we want to get as much money for, or excuse me, as much bang for the buck as we can. So just a thought there too.
My thought is that we're seem to be constantly taking on additional responsibilities from the province. I don't see that slowing down in any form, and I think we need to be ready for it to ensure that we've got staffing and we don't overload our staff. Councillor DeVolman?
Yeah, and I think to get a metric for the amount of people that are in our community that, you know, has exploded in the last year and a half. I mean, certainly healthcare, EMS, fire, landfills. There's a whole basket of things that if people are here, they have to use. That I think if we get consolidated metrics across all of those things, it'll probably give us a reasonably good figure about how much the growth has been and what we have presently to deal with, and if it continues, which I suspect it will, what we'll have to prepare for the next 5 or 10 years, you know, from an asset management point of view. Yes, the timing is wonderful to do this, to not only deal with what we have today, but let's look for the next 5-10 years what we need to do in our community.
I think I saw Councillor Roberts' hand up first, and then Councillor Moffat.
So actually, Councillor DeVolin, just as he was finishing what he's saying, sort of said that, how far out does a master plan generally go? So I know, you know, they always do a snapshot of what's the scenario, what's happening in whatever it'll be, 2022 or whenever. But how far out are we expecting a master plan to go in terms of years? Is it 5 or 10, as Councillor DeVolin said, or do we go out farther?
Mike, please. Sorry.
I guess I think a longer horizon is probably better, the 10 years at a minimum. Something to really bear in mind in all of this is that a new ambulance is well in excess of $1 million. And to not to purchase the vehicle, but to actually staff that ambulance is well over $1 million. So as we're contemplating bases and the buildings that are associated with that, supervisory staff to go along with those programs like community paramedic and other things, you know, it really is a substantial investment in the long term. So I think we would be looking for at least a 10-year plan to spread those investments out to the extent we can and still meet the needs and demands for this service.
If I could just follow, thank you. That was my thinking was 10 to 20, not 5 to 10, or 5, 10, and 20, or something like that.
The challenge when you go too far out is that it becomes more difficult. I guess it's more of a guesstimate as opposed to an educated one, but it's less concrete than it is if it's closer to the 10-year mark.
And things and pressures can change so dramatically, you know, by that point in time, it's it's just hard to plan that far ahead. Councillor Moffat.
Thank you. Piggybacking a little bit on that, you know, we're seeing it, we've spoken before about the growth and the incredible growth we've seen in the community because of COVID, and we don't know what the ebb and flow of that's going to be. And I think we have, and we need to continue to say out loud that, you know, increased growth equals increased costs, and the heady days of 2% and 3% increases are not sustainable, and people need to prepare for that. There's no way that we can adequately serve the growing and changing needs of the community and be really happy at 1.5%. It's just not doable. And, you know, people get really annoyed about increased costs. They also don't realize, I don't know the number, Mike might be able to say, at the county, a 1% tax rate increase generates how many dollars? 100,000?
About 182 last year.
182. So, you know, if it's $1 million to put an ambulance in service, I mean, it's pretty easy to do the math. So There are lots of things that people want us to do, things that need doing, things that the province says we have to do. And it's anyway, we just need to keep saying that out loud. People are already talking about, well, don't you put my taxes up? It's an election year, you know. It's like, come on, folks. Like, we've got a community to run here. So I just think it's important to start saying that out loud soon.
Any other comments or questions on this proposal? Okay, could I have a mover and a seconder then to move forward with the master plan? Councillor Kennedy and Councillor Moffat.
Moved by Councillor Kennedy, seconded by Councillor Moffat. Be it resolved that Haliburton County Committee of the Whole received the October 13th, 2021 staff report on development of a master plan for Haliburton County Paramedic Service and recommends to Haliburton County Council that application be made for modernization funding to develop and issue an RFP for consulting services to develop a Haliburton County Paramedic Service master plan.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Thanks, Chief Waite.
Thank you.
Next up is finance. So we'll bring in our Director of Corporate Services.
Good morning, Warden and Council.
Good morning.
My first report this morning is our September check register, which totaled $1,940,415.64.
Are there any questions on the check register? If not, could I have a mover and a seconder to approve the check register? Councillor DeVolen and Councillor Roberts.
Moved by Councillor DeVolen, seconded by Councillor Roberts. Be it resolved that the Haliburton County Committee of the Whole receives for information the staff report on the check register for September 2021. And further, that it be recommended to Haliburton County Council that the check register for September 2021 with checks, EFTs, and PAPs totaling $1,940,415.64 be hereby approved.
All in favor? That's carried. Next up is the payroll register.
We had 3 pay periods in September with net direct deposits totaling $683,498.70.
Any questions? Could I have a mover and a seconder for the payroll register, please? Councillor Shell and Councillor Kennedy.
Moved by Councillor Shell, seconded by Councillor Kennedy. Be it resolved that the Haliburton County Committee of the Whole receives for information the staff report on the payroll register for September 2021. And further, that it be recommended to Haliburton County Council that the payroll register for September 2021 with net direct deposits totaling $683,498.70 be hereby approved.
All in favor? That's carried. Next is our year-to-date actuals.
As at September 30th, 71.89% of our operating expenses have been incurred and 30.6% of our capital expenses incurred. We should be approximately 75% spent right now, so we are a little under right now.
Are there any questions or comments about the year-to-date actuals? Could I have a mover and a seconder then to accept them? Councillor Moffat, Councillor Roberts, thank you.
Moved by Councillor Moffat, seconded by Councillor Roberts. Be it resolved that Haliburton County Committee of the Whole receives for information the staff report on the year-to-date actuals as at September 30th, 2021. And further, that it be recommended to Haliburton County Council that the year-to-date actuals as at September 30th, 2021 be hereby approved.
All in favor? That's carried. And finally, under finances, the proposed budget timelines. And maybe you want to comment on that, Andrea?
So we have started the 2022 budget process within our departments. The CAO and I are starting budget discussions with our directors just this afternoon. So I recommended in my report that we bring the first draft of the 2022 budget to your regular scheduled Committee of the Whole meeting in November. This will allow the staff to provide you with an update of the 2021 projects and identify any major proposals or challenges that they see going into 2022, and allowing you to provide feedback and direction as we move forward in the process. And then we'll just continue to bring it back, the updated budget to council as I've outlined in my report as required.
Any questions or comments? Councillor Roberts?
Just to note that on committee the whole day, we five of us have library board meetings as well that have now switched to 3 o'clock. So hopefully we can fit it all in.
Okay. We'll keep that in mind then when scheduling, and if we need to adjust, we can, we'll definitely let you know.
Great.
The other option is to do a series of doodle polls.
Let's try and go with the schedule that's been laid out for now.
I like this schedule part, and I think it's great because I basically block off that day, but the library, I just wanted to let, because they may not have been aware that we did bump up our meetings earlier by an hour so that we're not heading into dinner time for some or past.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments or questions on the schedule for budgeting? Okay, could I have a mover and a seconder to accept the schedule? Councillor DeVolen, Councillor Royale.
By Councillor DeVolen, seconded by Councillor Ryle. Be it resolved that the Haliburton County Committee of the Whole receives for information the staff report on the 2022 budget timelines, and further that Haliburton County Committee of the Whole recommends to Haliburton County Council that the budget schedule be adopted as presented.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Thanks, Andrea.
Thank you.
Next up is IT, the status report and a draft backup and disaster recovery policy. Good morning, Mr. March.
Good morning, Warden Danielson, members of committee. So my first report is just my monthly IT status report, touching on a number of tickets we've completed, project statuses, and some key metrics. The only thing I wanted to bring to everybody's attention or just make note of is we just started a refresher of our security awareness training, both here at the county and the 4 municipalities. So I just want to take the opportunity to reiterate how important this training is. It is really where we get the most bang for our buck in terms of protecting our systems and our assets. And because of changes in the cybersecurity insurance industry, starting next year, it's quite likely that we will need to have everybody, without exception, trained in order to get our insurance renewed every year. So yeah, just wanted to make a note of how important that is, that we get everybody trained.
And that even members of council need to step up their game, right, Mr. March?
That is correct, yes.
Councillor Roberts.
Thank you. I said, I'm going to just get this done because otherwise it's going to fall by the wayside. So I did. And then I got thinking, does this extend to the local councillors as well and local municipalities? Okay, so I recall when we did this before, there was sort of some non-compliance just by inadvertence, or like I said, an email can get to the bottom of the list pretty quickly. So could you please reach out to our CAOs if was it October 31st deadline is approaching and you still have not received? I just have a feeling that people will need reminding, and maybe reminding.
And if I may, at one of our IT steering committee meetings or SDR meetings, I did bring this up. All the CAOs are very supportive of this measure. And then they've all said the same thing. If there's non-compliance, then I'll be following up with CAOs who will follow up with the appropriate staff.
Go ahead, Councillor Roberts.
Perhaps we should either have a prize for the first municipality with everybody in, or a shame for the ones that don't. I don't want to find out at committee the whole meeting in November that Dysert's at the bottom of the heap. So we'll get that in for you. It's very important. I'm laughing about it. It's not laughable. And now it's going to be dependent on our insurance. So it's very important.
Well, we're all going to have our eyes on Dysart. Could I have a mover and a seconder to accept the IT status report, please? Councillor Moffat, Councillor Kennedy.
By Councillor Moffat, seconded by Councillor Kennedy, be it resolved that Haliburton County Committee of the Whole receives for information the October 13th, 2021 IT Department Status Report.
All in favor? That's carried. And if you'd like to speak to your draft disaster recovery policy.
Definitely. So before committee today is a draft backup and disaster recovery policy for your consideration. As stated in the accompanying report, the purpose of the policy is to clearly define the strategy that the county has implemented in regards to its backup strategy, as well as the parameters for recovering systems in the event of a disaster. So just as a quick note, in the event of one of the disaster scenarios outlined in the report, the IT department will strive to get critical services back online for the county and municipalities within 24 hours using a backup set for no more than 24 hours. And just again, for your information, we have exercised our internal IT disaster recovery plan, and as of now, we can meet those timelines. We tested this past summer without any major issues. So I don't know if, again, always more than willing to go through this paragraph by paragraph, or if anyone has any specific questions about the policy, I'm more than happy to answer.
Are there questions or comments on the draft policy? Well, it looks like a fulsome policy. Could I have a mover and a seconder to adopt it? Councillor DeVolen, seconded by Councillor Ryle.
Moved by Councillor DeVolen, seconded by Councillor Ryle, be it resolved that Haliburton County Committee of the Whole receives for information the October 13th, 2021 report on the draft backup and disaster recovery policy, and that Haliburton County Committee of the Whole recommends to Haliburton County Council that the draft backup and disaster recovery policy be adopted.
All in favor? That's carried. Thanks, Mike, for your work on this, for keeping us protected. So next up, under planning and environment, I think we're going to be hearing from Corey McKay about greenhouse gas inventory and some local climate projections.
Good morning, Warden Danielson and members of council.
Good morning.
So this first report outlines our local greenhouse gas emissions within the boundary of the community, as well as future climate projections under a business as usual scenario. So this is a requirement under milestone 1 of the Partners for Climate Protection program. To summarize some of the main findings of the report, standard protocols were followed to measure our emissions from buildings, both residential as well as commercial, institutional, and industrial, as well as transportation and solid waste. Other optional categories such as off-road transportation and agriculture were included as well. 2019 was used as the baseline year, as this was the most recent year for which data was available. And it was found that the community emitted close to 300,000 tons of carbon dioxide equivalent and consumed almost 5 million gigajoules of energy, an expenditure of about $161 million. This is equivalent to about 7.6 tons of carbon dioxide equivalent per person at an expenditure of just over $4,000 annually. The main sources of emissions in the community were found to be on-road transportation at about 67%, residential buildings at 24%, industrial, commercial, and institutional buildings at 6%, and off-road transportation at about 3%. Emissions from both agriculture and waste accounted for less than 1%. Looking into 2030, emissions from buildings were expected to increase about 14% due to growing population and employment in the area. Emissions from transportation were expected to decrease about 6%, This is due to increases in fuel economy and uptake of electric vehicles, which are expected to outweigh the number of vehicles on the road that are increasing. So overall, community emissions are projected to remain approximately the same in 2030 as in 2019 in the absence of any policy or program changes. For climate projections, we are already seeing and will continue to see warmer, wetter, and wilder weather in the county. If the world continues on the same emissions pathway, climate models show that we will experience about a 4.4 degree rise in the average annual temperature towards the end of the century. The county will see many more days over 30 degrees Celsius and fewer, if any, days below minus 30 degrees Celsius. Total annual precipitation is expected to increase about 9%, with more extreme precipitation events with longer dry spells in between. And the water levels in our lakes and rivers will continue to experience increased variabilities and extreme. We will also see more frequent and intense storms. The next step is to use this information to prioritize actions that will have the greatest impact on reducing our emissions and building resilience toward a changing climate. So I'm happy to answer any questions on this first report.
Well, it's unfortunate that all your hard work gives us a kind of a disheartening picture. And obviously we've got some work to do. Questions and comments. I see Councillor Moffat, then Councillor DeVolen.
Thank you. And you're going to have to remind me when in the section when you're talking about the analysis of the inventory, and it talks about in 2019 the community emitted and the numbers are there. Is that terrible? Is that medium? Is that decent? Is it falling off the face of the planet? Like, give me some context for those numbers.
Yeah, so if we look at the per capita emissions, that's sort of what gives us the context, because that's emissions per person. So, and I can't look at the exact numbers, but I believe our per capita was around 7.6 tons per person, and the Ontario average was around 11. So that points to us being below average. However, I believe earlier in this meeting, we spoke to population projections and how we don't have the best data, and especially when, you know, how long are seasonal residents staying in the area. So that's based on a population of 19,000 for 6 months and 60,000 for the other 6 months. So again, it's all based on estimates.
Councillor DeVolen.
Yeah, a wonderful report. Just on page 15, it said we experienced significant flooding in 13, 15, 16, and should additionally say 17 in Minden Hills. We had a declaration in 17 as well. But great information to go forward with, that we can do more. And like I say, certainly with respect to capital improvements for the infrastructure within our area has principally funded by the federal government, has gone a long way. And that this kind of information with the LiDAR mapping and other stuff, whatever, with the changes in climate, we can dovetail that and offer future councils all kinds of good information and guidance about how we may further prepare for the wackier and wackier weather that we continue to get.
Councillor Roberts.
Thank you, Warden. So, Corey, one of the statistics you have there is the sources on-road transportation, but the second biggest one is residential buildings. And I just wonder, do you hear through your networks and through in your contacts, et cetera, that you would have of programs, either federally or provincially funded programs, to help people better insulate their homes, perhaps change their heating source, and that type of thing? That's proven to be very effective when people get rebates and stuff like that. So are there anything that you can see or anything that we can be made aware of to help people in our areas know that this is out there?
Yes, there is federal funding right now for home retrofits. I forget what the exact name of the funding is, but I believe you can get around $10,000 to retrofit your home, whether it's improving insulation or creating a more airtight building envelope. At the provincial level, I don't believe there is much right now, but part of implementing our plan will include, ensuring this information is available to our residents.
Councillor Moffat, then Councillor Kennedy.
Yeah, that question, Andrea, Councillor Roberts, actually feeds into some of the work being done at the Community Safety Wellbeing Plan table in terms of the provision of information. So everything is tied together, and we need to make sure that those communication channels stay open so that we can adequately inform the public of the programs that are available to help them contribute to the changes we need to see happen. So at that table, as I've been trying to work hard to ensure that sort of communication and the role of the county is sort of top of mind, and what role the county can play in terms of being the provider of that information. Some of these programs or opportunities live within different ministries and are administered by various agencies. Now they're all talking, but the group that's a bit late to the party in some cases is the county. So I feel you'll see this coming forward, but I feel very strongly that we should be tying this together into a one-stop shop. So if a funding opportunity is administered through City of Kawartha Lakes as a service manager, it doesn't mean we can't have it on our website, the county website, for county residents. So we need to have I believe that we need to have a portal that communicates what's available out there so that people better understand what they can do, what their role is in helping us achieve these targets. So it's sort of global citizenry or county-wide neighborhood citizenry as well. So I think you'll see a lot of that coming forward, hopefully.
Good point. Councillor Kennedy, then Councillor Duvall.
Yeah, thank you. Just had a question, Corey, on page 8 there. There's a statement that I found quite interesting. Just wanted an update on it. Introducing natural gas infrastructure to the community would lock in greenhouse gas emissions for decades to come. So obviously that's a goal to work towards. And we've had, I think, a number of initiatives started, installed. Any updates on progress or options that the county should be looking at to further help with this initiative?
So this plan will focus on, what our future energy needs are and how we can meet those through clean energy sources. So that point sort of speaks to climate action plans look at phasing out fossil fuels. And so natural gas is a fossil fuel. And so introducing it would mean increasing greenhouse gas emissions in the community. So that just sort of speaks to saying there are other clean energy sources that can be explored for our community.
So it shouldn't have been in the same paragraph as ensuring energy is affordable. Okay, thanks.
Yes, also very important.
Councillor Duvall, and then Councillor Moffat.
Yeah, and I'd say with respect to the federal program for energy renewals, and if we have opportunity for inputs to other levels of governments when they're creating it or when they do, it's one I looked at myself. The reality is, to pick the money up off the table, I had to contract out a bunch of services that aren't necessary. My house was built in 1975. When they're looking at these energy efficiencies, if the infrastructure and the buildings more than a certain amount of years old, by definition, it's deficient. It seems absurd to me that you have to fund a study on an old building on a go forward basis, and they could reallocate that money to maybe help individuals do it directly themselves or in another way. Like I say, on something that's maybe only 20 years old, the study to see where it's best allocated. But when something that's a 40, 50, 60-year-old building, by definition, any of those things in the category that will improve in insulation or windows or doors, like I say, in that context, I think that their need for the energy audit study is money misspent, that it could be reallocated given its age, that it's just, de facto not up to standards.
Councillor Moffat.
Thank you. I want to circle back to the safety and wellbeing plan. I don't think I said that climate change actually features quite heavily in the work that's being done so far. And I guess a question to Mike, or a reminder to ourselves, is, Because of that, how do we either, have Corey's work involved, or at least somehow ensure that the plans align where they need to achieve the anticipated outcomes of both of them? So just sort of food for thought. And the second comment was in the report, and certainly we've seen it in the safety and well-being plan, is there seems to be patchwork data across the board. And so is there, we talked about it again with the master plan for paramedic services. Is there anything we can do about that? Like, how do we address the data gaps, or can you address the data gaps when they come from different places? Because if we're supposed to be making changes based on knowledge and information, and we don't have the right information, how are we making the right choices? So I guess it's a bit of a rhetorical question, but there are definitely data gaps, and it could be one of those other big policy discussions that continues into the future. But a couple of thoughts there.
Councillor DeVolen, did you have a comment?
Just a quick one. I mean, we've talked about 2 or 3 things already this morning about data and data gaps. I'm hoping, Mike, that our new person with economic development, the collection of data as it services multiple departments and regions across the county, that will be at least part of what we can look forward to in the future.
Go ahead, Mr. Rutter.
So I'll answer Councillor DeVolen's question first. Certainly developing a community profile and all of the aspects of that is one of the first tasks that the new economic development director will be one of the first chores they'll be tasked with. Corey and I have actually had a number of conversations about how we ensure that her work, connects with the community safety and well-being plan. And I think until we see the final document, it's really difficult. We keep talking about it and saying we need to make sure that you stay connected to that process and that your work is aligned and all of those things. But until we have a formal document, it's hard to say how that will happen. But I guess the only thing I could say is it is top of mind for us. We will absolutely endeavor to make sure it is. One of the benefits of going through the community safety and well-being process is that we've become aware of different sources of data. So it's just a question of someone in this building or someone that is, works for the county knows where to seek that out, so we can fill in those data gaps that exist. And if that data doesn't exist, then we can try and figure out a way to get it. But it's actually really exciting for me to see how all of this work weaves together, and that, I think we can make a real difference with some of these programs. And so, I think it's absolutely top of mind. We need to make sure that Corey stays connected to that and that her work is fully aligned with the community safety and well-being plan.
Any other comments or questions at this point? Could I have a mover and a seconder then to accept the report on community greenhouse gas inventory and climate projections? Councillor Moffat and Councillor Roberts.
Moved by Councillor Moffat, seconded by Councillor Roberts. Be it resolved that the October 13th, 2021 staff report on community greenhouse gas inventory and local climate projections be received for information by Haliburton County Committee of the Whole, and that Haliburton County Committee of the Whole recommend to Haliburton County Council that staff be directed to present the report on community greenhouse gas inventory and local climate projections to the local municipal councils.
All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. Okay, next is your report on community climate action plan development.
Yes, so this next report focuses on the next steps, so moving forward with milestones 2 and 3, which include establishing targets and developing the community climate action plan. So the recommended first step for achieving these milestones from the PCP program is to develop a group made up of staff and external stakeholders to guide plan development. Key external stakeholders include representatives from the business community, energy sector, developers and builders, educational institutions, community organizations, conservation authorities and watersheds, as well as public health. So to move forward, the recommended approach is to identify a council representative to sit on the advisory group and have staff actively solicit applications for the community representatives. So it's anticipated that applications could open in November, with staff coordinating direct outreach and advertisements, and selection of members by council could occur in December. So a draft terms of reference for the advisory group has been created and is attached to the report. So happy to answer any questions on that report.
Are there some questions? Councillor Moffat.
Not so much a question as just a thought that I think it's a great list of potential sector representation. I do think it's really important to ensure that members who would populate this group understand the the parameters and the limitations of municipal government. So it can't just be a wish list of things that that local government should do, which then is a setup for disappointment and failure. So, and I'm hoping that there's enough understanding from the people who are on the committee to sort of get how it works, that it's not a setup for disappointment across the board. Because there's a lot of opportunity, but if people don't understand the context, it could end up just being an insatiable wish list. That's all.
Do we have a member of county council who wishes to be a champion of this group? I'll leave it with you to think about for a while before I just go ahead and appoint someone. But it'd be nice if it was something that somebody really was keen about being involved in. Councillor Moffat?
Never mind. It was already said. So thank you.
Okay. So we'll let you all think about that for just a little bit. Are there any other questions on the report itself? Okay, could I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Shell and Councillor Rail.
Moved by Councillor Shell, seconded by Councillor Ryle. Be it resolved that the October 13th, 2021 staff report on community climate action planning be received for information by Haliburton County Committee of the Whole. That Haliburton County Committee of the Whole recommends to Haliburton County Council that staff be directed to proceed with the development of the community climate action plan. And that Haliburton County Committee of the Whole recommends to Haliburton County Council that staff be directed to create a CCAP advisory group based on the terms of reference found in Appendix 1. And that Haliburton County Committee of the Whole recommends to Haliburton County Council that a member of council be appointed to the CCAP advisory group. And finally, that Haliburton County Committee of the Whole recommends to Haliburton County Council that staff be directed to provide an update to the local councils alongside the greenhouse gas inventory and local climate projections report as part of the CCAP process.
All in favor? That's carried. I just one more question, Corey. What's you wouldn't be going ahead and starting to set up this group until after the recommendation is accepted by county council later in the month, or what's your thought on timing for this?
So the thought was to advertise for applications in November from the community and then put forward a list of recommendations for county council to approve in December. But that's flexible, and potentially we could also appoint a member of council in December alongside the rest of the group as well. So it's up to council.
Okay, so if everyone would think about that and whether they would be interested in being involved, I would like to try and see us appoint someone from council at our council meeting at the end of the month. So let me know, and otherwise we'll have to just appoint someone. Thanks so much, Corey.
Thank you.
A lot of good work there. Okay, nothing on personnel. And next up is tourism. I'm assuming that you would be making that report, Mr. Rutter?
Yes, I will be.
Okay.
So hard to believe, we're looking forward in the calendar, and it's time to contemplate a Haight Haliburton winter edition. I will say that we hope to have a fulsome report on the summer edition of Haight Haliburton this year, which was very successful, and we hope to have that for November's Committee of the Whole meeting. Again, I'd like to thank Eric and Casper, the tourism assistant, and Tom Lambert for their help in this report. We've taken some time in the background to talk about the winter edition that was held in 2020. We had 20 guided snowshoe hikes, 300 participants for an average of 15 participants per hike, and they were spread around the entire county. There were 5 hikes that did take place on private land. Volunteerism was strong. We had 22 hike leaders and 20 hike sweeps, and that is our practice with our summer edition as well. And the administration was entirely virtual, which saved us a great deal of administrative costs on developing a program and the registration. We did note a few highlights. I won't necessarily go into a lot of them, other than to say that we are still in a COVID uncertain world, and we're not sure what the future will look like in February for COVID. But 83% of the participants were actually seasonal or permanent residents. So it didn't bring a lot of people from outside the community, other than I guess if we're worried about bringing too many people in and it causing a COVID concern, it didn't seem to be a lot of people that way. So I've noted that, but it certainly did increase economic activity, which you can see outlined below. We had planned another second edition last year, which didn't go forward due to strict province-wide shutdown, but we are proposing to move forward with one this year. We have outlined 3 options: a full-scale festival with few changes, if any, from the 2020 program, mindful of all COVID-19 safety protocols. Option B is a limited number of hikes and participants, and being mindful of all COVID-19 safety protocols. And option C is to not hold a festival at all. Should council wish to proceed with a winter edition, we are recommending that it take place February 5th and 6th.
Thank you. Any thoughts on or questions or comments on the report itself, and or which option we might pursue? Councillor Roberts and Councillor Moffat.
Thank you. Thank you for the report on the first edition, which was the 2020. I actually would like to propose option A. Seeing as a full-scale festival wasn't that big to start with, it was, what did you say, 20 hikes and that. I think this is fabulous. And even if we don't bring a whole lot of people in, we always know that there's that ripple effect. Maybe somebody can't make February 5th and 6th, but it's the advertising, it's the promotion, maybe especially the ones that are on public lands, such as it through Glebe Park, where we have snowshoe trails, or Snowden Park or something like that. And so I think there's not just the benefit of the weekend of an actual festival, but the entire winter gets advertised, as particularly on the public lands for those guided hikes. It was done virtually. We could do it virtually again in the administration side of it. It's a very low expense and a high return. So I'd go for option A.
Councillor Moffat, then Councillor Schell.
I agree completely. Past discussions about either the hiking festival or the winter edition have included some conversation about whether or not it does attract enough people from out of town, but there's no shortage of visitors here. And even last year through COVID, short-term rentals were full. And yes, there was that huge disconnect between resorts having to be closed, but there were people here and they were still out and about doing things, even when they weren't supposed to be. And now that they can, I think it's time to sort of get people out and about. We know they're out spending some money. Local people out spending some money is better than nobody out having fun spending no money. So I agree with Councillor Roberts. I say we go with option A and option A.
Councillor Shell.
I would absolutely support option A. I think it's time that we try to get back to doing some normal things. And for $3,000, that's a small price to pay for what it brings to the community. And it's an outdoor event. So I absolutely support option A.
Councillor DeVolen.
Absolutely. Option A. And given where we are in the province with COVID vaccinations in an outdoor event, I have no concerns about it being problematic. And the public and anything that I see indoor or out of doors in our community are being very responsible. So yeah, like, let's get this train back on the tracks and these outdoor activities, get them back to much normalcy as possible.
Any other comments or questions? Could I have a mover and a seconder to move to accept the report and move forward with option A? Councillor Moffat and Councillor Shell.
Moved by Councillor Moffat, seconded by Councillor Shell. Be it resolved that Haliburton County Committee of the Whole receives for information the report on the 2020 and 2021 Hike Haliburton Winter Edition and direct staff to proceed with option A, and that the festival be scheduled for February 5th and 6th, 2022.
All in favor? That's carried. We'll look forward to the success of that. Okay, next is a report on municipal modernization updates and possible allocations. Mr. Rutter.
Thank you. I've outlined in the report some actuals. We've had previous reports where we had estimates of what would be spent on a number of different projects to be funded with the modernization funding. We now have some actuals for the KPMG operational review, a couple EOWC top-ups for studies, a municipal 511 migration, service delivery review. You'll recall that had some additional funding as well, and so we've taken that into account. This is our net share. $100,000 for a fuel card lock system, which is in progress, and our Diamond software or financial software implementation. We are requesting that there be a number of additional allocations. This is important because until your money is fully allocated and or spent, the unconditional money that came, until it is fully allocated and or spent, you can't apply for other projects like the EMS Modernization Fund. So what we're suggesting is that $100,000 be allocated for electronic records management solution. The working group for IT has talked about that a lot, and you'll recall that we did have I guess a report prepared for us, but with a records management professional, and so we are hoping to take the results of that report and incorporate it into a solution for electronic records management. We're looking at some additional security at our public works yards. We've had some theft issues, and so we would like to do some additional security there. And then we are looking at $240,000 or so, and it may be a little more than that, for renovations at 11 and 12 Newcastle Street. Depending on the future of the building across the road from this one, there may be renovations that are required in both of those facilities, and so this is we really have no sense of how far that will go, but it is a good start and certainly fits the criteria of the modernization funding.
Questions, Councillor DeVolen?
Yeah, Mike. The electronic record management solution with what we do at the county, can that dovetail or be done in conjunction with works that may or may not be underway at the 4 municipalities?
Absolutely. I think we had talked at the working group that because next year's an election year, the local clerks will be very busy focused on those activities, but we won't be necessarily here at the county. And so what we're hoping is that we can implement a solution or pilot a solution that then can be implemented in the local municipalities as well. And they'll through the IT working group, they'll be involved from an information gathering standpoint anyway.
Thank you.
Councillor Roberts.
Thank you. So just to Mike, for clarification, so when I looked under the proposed projects and didn't see the EMS one, is that then because the EMS is going to be in a new stream?
Yeah.
Is that, okay, I didn't follow that when I read this and read the EMS report, so thank you.
That's right. And I think the, if past practice is any indication, the applications are due the October 19th for new modernization funding projects. And then typically the minister likes to announce those at the Roma conference. So if past practice is any indication, and so I would expect that that might be the case. Our plan would be to apply for that funding, and we won't be finished our budget process likely by the Roma conference, but even if we are, we would still look to do that that consulting work or that master plan development. We would just have to look for another source of funds to do it.
And based on your question, therein lies the need to allocate to projects or propose for projects.
Yeah.
Councillor Moffat.
Thank you. I'm not sure if this is the right juncture which to ask this question, and I'm happy to have it offline. With the electronic records management process, I know that there are policies for disposal and there are requirements for the retention of certain kinds of records. In the discussion and development of those policies, which I'm sure maybe we've seen somewhere and I've magically forgotten, I'd like to ensure or have a conversation with somebody around the heritage aspect of some of these records, because just because you can dispose of them doesn't mean, or we can dispose of them doesn't mean we should. We also can't keep everything forever. So I don't necessarily need to have an answer or a conversation now, but I just want to put that little bug in your ear about, I personally would like to know more because of my personal interest in local heritage, to ensure that that is being considered somewhere in terms of what gets sent to the shredder and what doesn't. So little bug.
I've got a question about the enhanced security at what that might entail for the public works yards.
Just because of the type of issue, would council be willing to discuss that in closed session? Just so, just because it is a matter of securing property.
Sounds good. So could I have a mover and a seconder to accept this report? Councillor Kennedy and Councillor DeVolen.
Moved by Councillor Kennedy, seconded by Councillor DeVolen. Be it resolved that Haliburton County Committee of the Whole received the October 13th, 2021 Municipal Modernization Update and Allocation Staff Report, and that it be recommended to Haliburton County Council that the remaining funds be allocated as outlined in the report.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. So that concludes the open portion of our meeting. And I'd be looking for a mover and a seconder to go into closed, but it also proposed that we might take a 15-minute break between now and closed session, if that sounds reasonable. So we would return at 10:25. Councillor Moffat, you're moving to go into closed? And Councillor Kennedy, thank you.
Moved by Councillor Moffat, seconded by Councillor Kennedy. Be it resolved that Haliburton County Committee of the Whole enter into closed session as per section 239 of the Municipal Act 2001 as amended for the following reasons: personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, labor relations or employee negotiations, a position, plan, procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to any negotiations carried on or to be carried on by or on behalf of the municipality or local board, advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose, and we will add security of property as well to discuss the modernization allocation.
Thank you. All in favor? That's carried. We'll see you at 10:25.
And we're back live, Warden Danielson.
Thank you. Is there anything on inter-municipal collaboration?
I don't think so, other than the working groups continue to meet. We are doing our best to focus our work, I think is the right term, so that each of the working groups can bring maybe a couple items and sort of a couple things we can finish or bring to the steering committee in November that would put you in a position where you can make some decisions. So we continue to meet. We are hoping to meet again on the 24th of November, I believe, and have some decisions or some recommendations for you to consider.
Thank you. If there's no further business, then could I have a mover and a seconder to adjourn? Moved by Pat, seconded by Cease.
Moved by Councillor Kennedy, seconded by Councillor Ryle. Be it resolved that the October 13th, 2021 meeting of Haliburton County Committee of the Whole now adjourned.
All in favor? That's carried. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Take care, guys.
Yep, you too.